And welcome back to Pokemon Team Videos. And today we did Kenpachi Zaraki. Not last week. What was last week's? Last week's was Sasuke? If I'm not mistaken, that was last week's. But we did Kenpachi, I believe, the week prior. And now we go for the main protagonist of Bleach, Ichigo Kurosaki. So, like with all the main protagonists of most shonen animes, they share a lot of traits in common. The strong will, both friends believe in their friends, friends believe in them. This normal shtick. But, there are unique things to Ichigo. His abilities, his personality is still generally unique overall. He's not an idiot. He's actually very intelligent compared to someone like Naruto, who grew into intelligence, whereas Ichigo was actually always pretty intelligent. And unique abilities, the whole works. So let's go down the list here and get Ichigo's Pokemon team. So let's get the one where I'm like, the last one I added to the list, because this was the hardest one. I'm like, what else can I figure out? So obviously in Bleach you have Zanpakutos. They're swords that are the manifestation of their souls. And I just simply went like, okay, I don't want to go Hone Edge again, because I don't want to go Hone Edge for every single Shinigami I ever do in this series, which will probably be a lot. But I'm like, oh god. I'm like, well, Doublade, his Zanpakuto turned into a dual blade in the 1,000-Year Blood War arc. I'll be fully honest here. This was the only one where I'm like, okay, I just need a filler. I need a 6th Pokemon on the team. I can't think of anything that really works past everything else I did, because I did Zangetsu, I did Hollow, I did Bankai, I did those things. This one I'm like, okay, his sword takes the form of 2 blades come the end of the series, so it works out just fine overall. So Hone Edge, that's the one I wanted to get out of the way right now. Let's now actually talk about the other Pokemon on his team now. So right off the bat, we have, I wanted to get a Pokemon that, because the thing about not trying to move him. There you are. The thing about Ichigo is, and the thing about a lot of the Pokemon I put on these lists, they are more a reflection of the abilities of the character, and to some extent the personality. I did want to put a bit more of Ichigo's personality onto his team if I could help it. And one of the things is that despite his bad attitude, or just, his temper, if you will, he doesn't have a terrible temper. He's just, he's a punk. He's got a punk-esque personality. He's a rough guy. He ultimately is a good person, as we know, protecting the innocent, protecting people, and he doesn't like bullies or anything like that. Well, ultimately, I came down to Pangoro being on his team for that. Pangoro fits that. Pangoros don't have very bad tempers, apparently. And, a trainer that deals with them has to kind of go into fisticuffs with them. But they are a Pokemon that ultimately protects other Pokemon. They don't like bullies at all. They are more or less Pokemon that are very much protectors of others. And that, I think, really is Ichigo in a nutshell. He is a protector of others. Despite how his gruffness may ultimately come down, he is a person who generally cares about others and tries to protect them. And I think that's Pangoro. Pangoro obviously also has a very scary outer demeanor, which I think ultimately fits pretty well. Now, I also wanted a Pokemon, and I don't know if I'll ever do a team for Cone at all, but I also wanted a Pokemon, because Cone, that's tough to figure out a team for Cone. But I wanted a Pokemon to represent Cone, because in the first part of the series, he needs to have his mod soul Cone in there, and a little stuffed animal, so he has him on call in case he needs to fight Hollows when Rukia wasn't around. So he pops the pill, Cone inhabits his body while Ichigo is, out fighting. So, alright, I need a doll Pokemon. And once you know it, there is a ragdoll Pokemon in Bayonet. I didn't go Mega Bayonet, just because no real reason. Well, actually, there was more than one reason, and I'll get to that in a little bit. But I'm actually also wondering why Bayonet among Pokemon was one to get a Mega Evolution. Not that Mega Bayonet doesn't look cool. It does, but no, I don't know. There's a cool short film too, a live action short film that involves Bayonet and a Mimikyu, which is actually pretty cool. But yeah, it's a ragdoll Pokemon, and it's a ghost, so the spirit aspect of Bleach comes through on that as well. Is it a perfect Pokemon? Probably not perfect for Ichigo's team, but is it a apt Pokemon to represent Cone? Oh, 100%. I think it's apt to represent Cone. I think that's the best you probably could have gone with. So now we really get into more of the meat of Ichigo and his character, and exactly what that entails, I suppose. So one of the things Ichigo is really known for, and once he goes into Bankai, is his speed. The Pokemon, we needed a Pokemon because basically what it does is it compresses all his spiritual energy into his body for heightened combat, strength, durability, speed. All of his abilities are heightened to, umpteenth degree. It's predominantly a melee Zanpakuto, but still. So I'm like, okay, I need a really fast Pokemon. Ichigo isn't the fastest character in the series, though. Let's be clear about that. So I'm not going full on. Apparently, Regielect is actually not the fastest new Pokemon with base speed of 200. Jesus. But I'm like, okay, no, I don't need Regielect. Besides the electricity kind of being a representative of Ryotsu in terms of energy, there's no real reason for a Regielect. And again, Ichigo's not the fastest Pokemon. Ichigo's not the fastest character in Bleach, probably by a long shot. He's pretty fast, but he's not that fast. So I'm like, okay, scale it down. It can't be the fastest Pokemon there is, but it's got to be a fast Pokemon. Okay, no. And I'm like, okay, Zacian has a base speed of 138, and when he goes into his crowned sword form, I believe it's called, or crowned armor form, whatever, it goes into his crown form, it goes to like the 148. That's pretty fast, but not so fast as to be overwhelming to other Pokemon out there who have higher speed stats, to represent the fact there are faster Pokemon out there, faster Shinigami. And I use this image, the Hero of Battles image, because I think that actually really represents Ichigo well. First and foremost, I actually think the Hero of Many Battles forms, I believe that's both of them, for Zacian and Zamazenta, are honestly much better looking and aesthetically than the actual armored forms. I'm like, no, you could have made these legendaries and they frankly would have looked a lot cooler. And I think that's perfect for Ichigo because he is a hero of many battles. He's got scars. I mean, actually, he doesn't really have scars mostly because he's gotten around to heal and special healing blasts a lot of the time. But he's a hero of many battles. He's extremely powerful, even like in a base stat. But then if you want to go even further, once he goes into his Shinigami form, or once he activates his Visor Mask, or once he goes Bankai, he gets stronger, he wields his blade, his form changes. So I think Zacian is actually a really good Pokemon to be on Ichigo's team. So that brings us to the last two. Now, two of these I found really, the last two weren't difficult per se, but I'm like, I saw one, and we're going to talk about this one a little bit, and this one next, actually. And I'm like, I want that on his team, but can I justify having it on his team? And I had to think about that. I was like, okay, let me read the Pokedex entry on this. I mean, you can make the argument he has these abilities, but most characters kind of have these abilities to some degree with enough, battle experience and all that. But then I'm like, well, wait, he's got the ability to do that. Okay, and he can do that. All right, I convinced myself. Absol, specifically Mega Absol. An Absol that can Mega Evolve. Now, why Absol that can Mega Evolve? Well, let's go. First off, aesthetically, the black and white in Absol's design. I've always loved Absol, by the way. Absol's always been a great Pokemon, in my opinion. But the black and white in Absol's design is supposed to represent a yin-yang sign, is what it's supposed to represent. And I like in the Mega Evolution how it looks even more like a yin-yang symbol in it. But more importantly, the black and white really represents the duality of the characters of Bleach. Bleach is the absence of black, but, they're all wearing Shihakushu's black and white. There's very large ties to black and white Ichigo, the white hollow in there, which is actually Zangetsu. So there's a lot of ties there. But also, Absol can learn a lot of slashing attacks, including Night Slash, Psycho Cut, Mega Horn, think words here, just Standard Slash. He can learn a lot of Getsuga Tensho-esque attacks. So I felt that was actually a pretty solid option in terms of something that represents a Zangetsu-based attack, a Getsuga Tensho. At least from my opinion. I could see other people being like, well, what about Lucaria's Aura Sphere? Kind of. Any Pokemon that can learn Aura Sphere is, I guess, technically doing a variation, but Getsuga Tensho's description, at least by Ichigo, is that he absorbs the Ryatsu, swings, and gives it an amplified swing. So you're firing off a lasered crescent attack. That's what you're doing, Ichigo. Come on. But honestly, I liked Absol better from aesthetic purposes. And then if you add Mega Evolution onto there, which I did, you're basically adding, say, putting your visor mask on, upgrading, or adding a Bankai on there. So I felt Mega Absol was actually a pretty solid choice in my mind. Absol in general was a good choice, at least in my opinion. So last but not least, we have the last one. And there's one aspect of Ichigo we really haven't touched on yet. I've mentioned Visor, but we have not mentioned anything about Ichigo's hollows, or inner hollow. So I wanted a Pokemon that was going to represent his inner hollow. And I'm like, okay, well, I mean, in theory, Absol can kind of represent White Zangetsu, or White as he's known, Hollow Ichigo, if you will, inside of him. Would represent him immediately there, but that's not good enough for just Hollow Ichigo. I need something that either represents the form he took while he fought the Vizards, or more importantly, the Vastolordes form he took when he fought Ulquiorra. And when I've thought on it long enough, I'm like, it's got to be if I'm getting a Pokemon that's a Hollow Pokemon form, I need it to be Ulquiorra, the Vastolordes Hollow form. I think that's the more how would I put it? I think that's the more identifiable one, the one that people really go to when they think about Hollow Ichigo more. I'm sure people do talk about the lizard form, sure, but I think this is the one that people really identify with Ichigo more or less. So now that happened, I'm like, okay, what Pokemon aesthetically looks like that, thematically fits like that? What do I? Because I mean, that in itself, you alter it a little bit, obviously downgrade the power quite a bit. That could be a Pokemon in and of itself. I mean, you add some actual like chibi eyes into those hollow eyes it has, shrink it down, maybe make it a bit more animalistic, all that, and that thing could be a Pokemon in its own right, or a Digimon, something like that. So I'm looking through, I'm like, is there anything that could represent Hollow freaking Ichigo? I'm like, okay, let me go through the dark types. They might have the close one. And I looked again, I'm like, aesthetics-wise, Mega Houndoom seems to actually fit that bill. I mean, look at that. Look at his horn. Those are Hollow Ichigo. I mean, they're not exact, because they're actually pointing straight up, whereas Ichigo's horns were actually like pointed, or curved, pointing towards the opponent, facing away from Ichigo's head or his face. But when you get just a quick look at that, you can make an argument too. There is a genetic alteration to Ichigo's Houndoom, where his horns do curve out a bit more. You could do that, but look, it's a freaking Hellhound. It's a Mega Evolution, so it's got the power. It's got the bones all over there, which was really a key for Hollow Ichigo, looking like he's pretty much made of like a walking skeleton, pretty much. He can launch fire and dark type attacks, which could fit for Sarah's as well. In fact, let me see what Houndoom's attack listing is real quick here, or a list of attacks it can learn. I'm just okay. So Inferno, you can make an argument for that. Thunder Fang, nothing really. Any sort of fire attack is probably pretty evident, or pretty reflective of, say, like a Getsuga Tensho or a Sero. But I'm sure he can learn Shadow Ball. There's your Sero right there. Hyper Beam, yep. So he can learn attacks that represent like the Sero that Ichigo fires. It's just, and as a Mega Evolution too, his stats go from 500 base to Mega Evolution 600 base. He goes right into pseudo legendary territory the minute he hits Mega. So yeah, I think it's a pretty solid option. And his shiny is actually pretty decent looking too. So I don't know if I'd say it's a better shiny than or if the shiny is better in terms of representing the hollow form than the base form is. But ultimately, I went with the base form. I mean, shiny is not the one of the best shinies there is either, but it's good. But ultimately, that is my team for Ichigo Kurosaki. We have Bayonetta to represent a Cone when he had to use Cone. Pangoro to represent his personal attitude, his attitude, demeanor, and appearance. Honedge just because he ended up with a dual sword. I admit I copped out on that last one. But Zacian to represent the speed of his Bankai. The fact that he is a hero of many battles, the fact that he can transform, and the fact that he wields a sword. Absol to represent duality, color palette, but also Zangetsu gets a potential, and Mega Evolution as well to represent, again, transformations he goes through. And then finally, Mega Houndoom to represent his hollowified self, particularly Vasto Lordis Ichigo. But ultimately, this is just my opinion on Ichigo Kurosaki's team. What are your thoughts? What type of Pokemon team would you give him? Put in the comments below and let me know. But thank you for watching. Hope you enjoyed. Like, comment, share, and subscribe. As always, if you want us to review something, put in the comments below. Let us know. We'll do a review of it at some point. And ideas for who would win, Star Wars, Super Magic, what if anything you do in the channel. Put that in the comments below. Let me know. I'll get that at some point. So hit that bell if you want to be notified. I'll see you next time, folks.